The large meeting room fell silent as the alien diplomat finished speaking. Captain Jack Miller felt his stomach tighten. The words hung in the air like a death sentence for humanity. "The Treaty of Stars is clear," said the tall, blue-skinned Vox representative. "New species may not build warships or weapons beyond Level 3 technology. These terms are not open for debate." Jack watched Earth's politicians nod their heads. What choice did they have? Humanity had only discovered faster-than-light travel 5 years ago. Their first ventures beyond the solar system had quickly revealed a shocking truth. They were far from alone, and far from equal. The Galactic Union, ruled by 3 ancient species, the crystalline Vox, the cloud-like Mist Collective, and the scaled Drax, had welcomed Earth with open arms and tight restrictions. "We accept your terms," said President Hall, looking defeated even as she smiled for the cameras. 3 months later, Jack sat in his small apartment staring at his ceiling. Since leaving the military's engineering corps, he had taken small jobs designing civilian ships. Nothing exciting. Nothing that mattered. A knock at his door surprised him. It was nearly midnight. "Who is it?" he called, approaching cautiously. "Admiral Wilson." "Open up, Miller. This isn't a social call." Jack hadn't seen his old commander in years. He quickly opened the door. Admiral Wilson looked older, his face lined with worry. "May I come in?" Jack nodded, stepping aside. "What brings you here so late, sir?" The Admiral sat heavily on Jack's worn couch. "What I'm about to tell you cannot leave this room." Jack sat across from him, suddenly alert. "Understood. The Drax are planning something. Our deep space listening posts have picked up unusual movements near their border worlds. Intelligence suggests they're building up forces. I thought the Union kept peace between all member species," Jack said. Admiral Wilson laughed without humor. "The Union keeps the powerful in power. The Drax have always viewed lesser species as resources, not equals. They've been pushing for stricter controls on Earth since we joined. And now they're preparing for something military." Jack asked. "Yes. And thanks to the treaty, we can't build proper defenses. Our hands are tied." Jack leaned forward. "Why are you telling me this?" The Admiral's eyes locked with his. "Because you were always the one who found solutions when none existed. We need that now more than ever." The next morning, Jack found himself in an underground facility beneath the Rocky Mountains. A group of somber-faced government officials and military leaders sat around a large table. "Captain Miller, thank you for coming," President Hall said. Her face looked thinner than during the treaty signing. "Admiral Wilson speaks highly of your creative approach to problems." "Ma'am, I'm just an engineer. An engineer who once rebuilt a destroyer's weapons system using mining equipment and satellite parts," Admiral Wilson added. The Defense Secretary pushed a tablet toward Jack. "The Drax will be in position to strike Earth within 8 months. We have intelligence that suggests they plan to make humanity an example to other new species who might grow too quickly." Jack studied the data. "And we can't build warships because of the treaty." "Exactly," said the President. "If we violate the treaty, we lose any protection it offers. The other Union species could legally attack us." Jack stared at the ceiling, thinking. Then he smiled slowly. "The treaty says we can't build warships, but what exactly is their definition of a warship?" The room grew quiet. "Go on," the Admiral urged. "The treaty defines warships as vessels designed primarily for combat operations. What if we build ships that aren't primarily for combat, but can defend themselves if needed?" The Defense Secretary frowned. "The Union inspectors aren't fools." "No," Jack agreed, "but they're bound by their own laws and definitions. If we build ships that technically meet civilian classifications but can be reconfigured when needed, we might have a chance." President Hall leaned forward. "You're suggesting we find a loophole." "I'm suggesting we think differently about what a ship can be," Jack replied. "The Union species have been building the same types of vessels for thousands of years. They lack imagination. 2 weeks later, Project Shield Maiden began in an abandoned mining facility on Mercury. The planet's electromagnetic interference made it perfect for hiding from Union sensors. Jack had assembled his team. Tom Reed, a shipyard designer known for thinking outside the box. Dr. Beth Morgan, the brilliant physicist who specialized in energy systems. And Max Rivera, one of Earth's leading AI experts. "So let me get this straight," Tom said as they reviewed the plans. "We're building ships that aren't warships, but can fight if needed." Jack nodded. "Exactly. Think of it like this. A kitchen knife isn't a weapon, but it can be used as one if someone attacks you." Beth tapped her tablet. "I've been studying Union weapon classifications. Their definitions are surprisingly narrow. If we design our energy systems correctly, we could create something powerful that's technically classified as mining equipment." Max looked up from his computer. "And I can design distributed AI systems that allow separate civilian modules to work together in ways the Union hasn't considered." Jack smiled at his team. "The Dracs think they have us cornered. They believe humans are like all the other species they've bullied over the centuries. But there's something they don't understand about us." "What's that?" Tom asked. "Humans have been breaking rules creatively since we first crawled out of the mud," Jack said. "It's what we do best." 6 weeks into the project, they had their first breakthrough. Beth had developed an energy system that used crystalline matrices, similar to those the Vox themselves used, to focus and amplify energy. On paper, it was classified as an excavation tool, but with slight adjustments, it could cut through a Drax warship's hull. Tom had designed modular hull sections that could separate and reconfigure into smaller, faster craft. Each section, individually, was classified as a scientific analysis pod, but together they formed something far more dangerous. Max's AI systems were the final piece, allowing these separate components to work as one when needed, while remaining technically independent for classification purposes. As Jack watched the first simulations run successfully, Admiral Wilson joined him at the observation window. "Will it work?" the Admiral asked. Jack watched the holographic display as their theoretical ship separated into 30 autonomous units, surrounded a simulated Drax vessel, and disabled it without destruction. "It will work," Jack said confidently. "We're not building warships." "Admiral." "What are we building then?" Jack smiled. "Something better. Something the Union has never seen before." The Admiral nodded slowly. "How soon until the real thing?" Jack looked at the timeline on the wall. 4 months until the first vessel. We'll call it the Daedalus. "After the great inventor," the Admiral noted. "Yes," Jack replied. "The man who built wings when others thought flight was impossible." Outside the viewports of the Mercury facility, Earth glowed blue and green in the distance, vulnerable, but not defenseless. Not anymore. 6 months passed since Project Shield Maiden began. The secret facility on Mercury hummed with activity day and night. Jack Miller walked through the main construction bay, watching as workers assembled large sections of what would become the Daedalus. "How's it looking?" he asked Tom, who was directing a team attaching one of the modular sections. Tom wiped sweat from his forehead. "On schedule. These modular sections are working even better than we hoped. Each one can function on its own or connect with others in over 50 different combinations." Jack nodded, pleased. "And they all still classify as non-military under Union definitions." "Every single piece," Tom confirmed with a grin. "On paper, they're just multi-purpose exploration pods. But when needed, they can form a defense grid that would make any Drax captain think twice." Jack moved on to Beth's lab, where she was fine-tuning the energy systems. Blue light pulsed through crystalline structures on her workbench. "Progress?" Jack asked. Beth looked up, her eyes bright with excitement. "Better than expected. These mining lasers can now switch configurations in under 3 seconds. When they're in standard mode, they're perfect for cutting through asteroids. But with one command," she tapped her console, and the beam narrowed to a thin, intensely bright line. They become precise enough to disable a ship's engines without destroying the vessel, and Union inspectors would still classify them as mining equipment. Beth nodded. The Vox use similar technology themselves. They can't call it a weapon without reclassifying their own tools. Jack's final stop was Max's programming center, where holographic displays showed complex patterns flowing like rivers of light. "How's our brain coming along?" Jack asked. Max didn't look up from his work. "The distributed AI system is almost ready. Each module will have its own limited intelligence, but when they link together, they'll form a coordinated network. The best part: since no single module contains the full combat subroutines, none of them individually violates the weapon's restrictions." Jack smiled. "Excellent work, everyone. At this rate, we'll have the Daedalus ready for its first test flight in just." An alarm blared throughout the facility. Red lights flashed on the walls. "What's happening?" Jack demanded. Admiral Wilson's voice came over the comm system. "Union inspectors just entered orbit around Mercury. They're requesting permission to tour our mining research facility. They'll be here in 30 minutes. Jack turned to his team. "You know what to do. Activate Protocol Innocence." Workers rushed to reconfigure the facility. Military-looking equipment disappeared behind false walls. Combat simulations were replaced with mining operations data. The modular sections of the Daedalus were quickly separated and made to look like individual research projects. 28 minutes later, the main airlock opened. A tall, blue-skinned Vox diplomat named Kell entered, followed by representatives from the Mist Collective and the Drax. The Drax inspector, a green-scaled being with yellow eyes, looked particularly interested in the facility. "Welcome to the Mercury Mining Research Center," Jack said with a practiced smile. "I'm Jack Miller, Project Director." Kell nodded politely. "We receive reports of unusual material requisitions for this facility. The Union Council sent us to ensure compliance with the Treaty of Stars." "Of course," Jack said smoothly. "We're happy to show you everything we're working on." For the next 2 hours, Jack led the inspectors through carefully prepared areas of the facility. He showed them the mining laser prototypes, the habitat modules, actually the separated sections of the Daedalus, and the distributed analysis systems, Max's combat eye in disguise. The Drax inspector grew increasingly frustrated. "These energy readings are unusually high for mining equipment," he hissed. Beth stepped forward. "That's because we're testing new efficiency protocols. Earth's mining operations need to be competitive with established Union worlds. We have to do more with less." Kell, the Vox diplomat, studied a modular section carefully. "Interesting design choices. These connection ports seem almost like they could be used to join these modules together." "For ease of transport, of course," Tom explained quickly. "It's much more efficient to move them as a single unit when relocating to new mining sites." As the tour ended, Kell lingered behind the others. When they were briefly alone, he turned to Jack. "Clever," he said quietly. "Very clever." Jack kept his face neutral. "I don't know what you mean." Kell's crystalline eyes seemed to see right through him. "The Treaty of Stars has existed for 10,000 years. In all that time, no species has approached its restrictions quite like this." He paused. "The Drax are not as flexible in their thinking." Before Jack could respond, Kell rejoined the other inspectors. The delegation left shortly after, with the Drax representative looking annoyed but unable to cite any specific violations. "They suspect something," Admiral Wilson said later in the secure conference room. Jack nodded. "Yes, but they can't prove anything. Every piece of equipment we showed them meets civilian classifications under the treaty." The Vox inspector seemed almost impressed, Beth noted. "And the Drax looked like he wanted to tear your head off," Tom added with a laugh. Admiral Wilson's face remained serious. "Our intelligence suggests the Drax fleet is nearly ready. They're gathering near the Arcturus system. We need to accelerate our timeline." Jack made a decision. "The Daedalus is ready for its first test. Let's launch in 3 days." The launch day arrived. The Daedalus had been assembled in its complete form for the first time, a massive vessel over 800 meters long, with 30 detachable modules arranged in a formation that looked more scientific than military. Earth's officials observed from a safe distance as the ship moved slowly out of the Mercury facility and into space. "She looks like a research vessel," President Hall noted. "That's the point," Jack replied. "Official designation: Long-Range Exploration Vessel. Purpose: Deep space research and resource surveying." The Daedalus accelerated smoothly, heading toward the asteroid belt for its first test. "Now," Jack ordered when they were safely away from Mercury. "Separation test." The massive ship shuddered slightly. Then, like a puzzle coming apart, it separated into 30 distinct sections. Each module moved independently, forming a sphere around an imaginary target. "Energy systems test," Jack continued. The mining lasers on each module glowed blue, connecting in a web of energy that could ensnare any vessel unfortunate enough to be caught within. "Perfect," Jack said, watching the readings. "Rejoin configuration." The modules smoothly reconnected, once again forming the innocent-looking research vessel. Admiral Wilson's voice came over the comm. "The first Union inspection satellite will pass by in 5 minutes. Return to exploration configuration." By the time the Union satellite appeared, the Daedalus was calmly taking readings of a nearby asteroid, looking exactly like what its papers claimed it to be, a peaceful research vessel. But Jack knew the truth. Humanity had just launched its first defense ship, not a warship, not technically. Something much more clever. Something the Drax would never see coming. "Send the coded message to Earth," Jack told his communications officer. "Tell them. The Maiden shields with invisible swords." As the Daedalus continued its research mission, Jack watched the stars. Somewhere out there, the Drax were coming. They thought they would find a defenseless planet, bound by a treaty designed to keep newcomers weak. They were in for a surprise. 2 months after the successful test of the Daedalus, 3 more vessels joined Earth's exploration fleet: the Prometheus, Atlas, and Hermes. Each ship incorporated improvements based on lessons learned from the Daedalus, and each carefully maintained its civilian classification while hiding powerful defensive capabilities. Jack stood on the observation deck of Earth's orbital command station, watching as the Atlas prepared for its mission to the Jupiter moons. The ship gleamed in the sunlight, its modular sections fitting together perfectly to form what appeared to be a standard research vessel. Admiral Wilson joined him at the viewport. "Beautiful ships," he said quietly. "They're not warships," Jack reminded him with a small smile. "Just very adaptable exploration vessels." The Admiral's face turned serious. "We just received news from Europa Research Station. All communication has stopped." Jack turned to face him. "What happened?" "Unknown. Last transmission mentioned unidentified ships entering the area." "Then nothing." Jack felt a chill. "The Drax." "That would be my guess, though they'll claim it was pirates or some other convenient excuse." The Admiral handed Jack a tablet. "The Council wants you to take the Atlas to investigate. Officially, it's a scientific mission to check on our research team." Jack nodded, understanding the unspoken message. "And unofficially, find out what happened, and if it was the Drax, show them what our exploration vessels can do." 3 days later, the Atlas entered Jupiter's orbit. Jack stood on the command deck, watching as the massive gas giant filled the view screen. "Scan for any vessels near Europa," he ordered. The sensor operator worked her console. "No ships detected currently, sir, but I'm picking up debris in Europa orbit. And energy weapon signatures, definitely military grade." Jack's jaw tightened. "Take us in." Full scan of the research station site. As the Atlas approached Europa, the damage became clear. The research station had been completely destroyed. Wreckage floated in the moon's thin atmosphere. "Any survivors?" Jack asked, though he already knew the answer. "No life signs, sir," the sensor operator replied quietly. Jack was about to order a debris collection when alarms sounded across the bridge. Multiple ships dropping out of FTL, the tactical officer announced. 5 vessels, Drax energy signatures. They're heading straight for us. Jack took a deep breath. This was what they had prepared for, but hoping would never happen. Send Union Standard hails. Identify us as a research vessel, investigating the loss of our station. The communications officer sent the message. The response came quickly. They say they're here to assist with the investigation and recommend we leave the area for our safety, she reported. They claim pirates have been active in this region. Jack's eyes narrowed. Pirates using Drax weapon signatures. How convenient. He turned to his tactical officer. Are they scanning us? Yes, sir. Standard military suites. Let them see exactly what we want them to see. A civilian research vessel, nothing more. The lead Drax ship sent another message. Human vessel, we detect unusual configurations in your ship design. Prepare to be boarded for inspection under Union security protocols. Jack smiled. They want to see our unusual configurations. Let's show them. Initiate separation sequence. The bridge crew worked quickly. The Atlas shuddered slightly, then began to change. The modules that formed the large ship detached from one another, spreading out in a carefully choreographed dance. Within minutes, what had been one large research vessel became 30 autonomous units surrounding the Drax ships. They're powering weapons, the tactical officer reported. Activate defensive systems, Jack ordered calmly. Remember, non-lethal responses only. The Drax ships fired first. Energy beams lashed out at the nearest human modules, but Beth's special shielding absorbed the blasts. The modules responded with their mining lasers, precisely targeting the Drax ship's weapon systems and engines. 2 Drax vessels lost power immediately. The others tried to regroup, but the human modules were too numerous and too quick, darting between the larger ships like insects swarming a predator. Their flagship is attempting to jump to FTL, reported the tactical officer. Use the gravity net, Jack ordered. 4 modules positioned themselves around the Drax flagship and activated what were officially classified as gravitational research tools. The space around the Drax ship distorted, preventing it from activating its faster-than-light drive. Within 20 minutes, all 5 Drax ships floated powerless, surrounded by the modules of the Atlas. Open a channel to their commander, Jack said. The view screen showed a green-scaled Drax officer, his yellow eyes burning with anger. This is Captain Jack Miller of the Earth exploration vessel Atlas. We've disabled your ships but caused minimal damage and no casualties. We will transmit evidence of your attack on our research station to the Union Council. The Drax commander hissed. You have violated the Treaty of Stars. Your vessel is clearly a warship. Jack smiled. Actually, it's not. Check your scans more carefully. Each module surrounding your ships is independently registered as a non-military device. There is no single warship here, just 30 civilian units working together very, very effectively. This is trickery. The Drax commander spat. No, Jack replied calmly. This is humanity finding a solution within your rules. We'll be escorting your disabled vessels to the nearest Union outpost. I suggest you prepare to explain why you attacked a human research station. 1 week later, Jack stood before the Union Council on their massive station near Alpha Centauri. Representatives from all member species were present, with the Drax delegation looking particularly unhappy. Kell, the Vox diplomat, who had inspected the Mercury facility, led the questioning. Captain Miller, the Drax have formally accused Earth of violating the Treaty of Stars by building warships. How do you respond? Jack gestured to the holographic display, showing the Atlas and its modules. The treaty defines a warship as a single vessel designed primarily for combat operations. What you see here are 30 separate modules, each independently registered for non-military purposes. They can work together when needed, but they are not a single warship. Murmurs spread through the council chamber. The Drax representative stood. This is merely wordplay. The intent is clearly military. The intent, Jack countered, is to protect our people from unprovoked attacks, like the one on our Europa station, which we have proven was carried out by Drax forces, not pirates. Kell studied the holographic display with his crystalline eyes. Then, to everyone's surprise, he laughed. A sound like tinkling glass. In 10,000 years of the treaty, he said, no species has approached its restrictions in quite this way. He turned to the council. The humans have found a path between the words of our law. Their vessels, individually, do not violate our technical definitions. The Drax representative hissed in anger, but other council members were nodding thoughtfully. The Mist Collective representative, a swirling cloud of gas in a containment suit, spoke next. Perhaps the treaty itself needs clarification. Jack held his breath. This was the moment that would determine Earth's future. Kell's crystalline eyes met Jack's. Or perhaps, said the Vox diplomat, we have something to learn from our newest members. The Union Council meeting ended without a clear decision. The Drax representatives stormed out, their scaled faces dark with anger. Jack knew this wasn't over. They'll retaliate, Admiral Wilson said as they boarded their shuttle back to Earth. The Drax never accept defeat, especially not public humiliation. Jack nodded. How soon? Intelligence suggests they're already mobilizing their main fleet. 50 warships, maybe more. Jack let out a low whistle. Our 4 vessels won't be enough against that many. Then we'd better come up with something new, the Admiral replied. It's what humans do best. 3 weeks later, long-range sensors detected a large Drax fleet entering the outer solar system. Earth's officials gathered in the Emergency Command Center beneath Geneva. 53 warships, the Defense Secretary reported grimly. They'll reach Earth in less than 2 days. President Hall looked at Jack. Options. Jack activated the holographic display. We have the Daedalus, Prometheus, Atlas, and Hermes positioned in Mars orbit. Each can separate into 30 modules, giving us 120 units total, against 53 fully armed warships. Someone asked. Those aren't good odds. We don't need to destroy them, Jack explained. We just need to stop them. The Union Council is watching. If the Drax openly attack Earth after we prove they attacked our Europa station, they'll lose political standing. Unless they win quickly and completely, Admiral Wilson pointed out. Then they'll control the narrative. Jack nodded, which is why we've developed Operation Trojan. He brought up schematics of a modified module from the Prometheus. We've created a special set of modules designed to look damaged in battle. If the Drax bring one aboard to study, as their protocol dictates for capturing new technology. Beth continued the explanation. Once inside their ship, the module will activate dozens of smaller units, each the size of a coffee mug. They'll disable the Drax ships from within. It's risky, Tom added. We'll need to make the damage look convincing. President Hall studied the plan, then looked up. Do it. Humanity is counting on you. The 4 human vessels took position in Mars orbit. Jack commanded from the Prometheus, which carried the special Trojan modules. Drax fleet approaching. The sensor officer reported. They've arranged in attack formation. Open a channel, Jack ordered. The communications officer worked her console. Channel open. Jack straightened his uniform. This is Captain Jack Miller of Earth Defense. You are entering restricted space without authorization. The Union Council has been notified of your movements. The view screen showed a large Drax commander, his scales darker than most Jack had seen. I am Fleet Commander Vex of the Drax Imperium, he hissed. Your pathetic legal tricks may have worked in the council chamber, but they will not save you here. Surrender your ships and prepare for occupation. Jack shook his head. That's not going to happen, Commander. The Drax bared his teeth. Then you will be destroyed. The Union rules are clear. If you resist with military force, you have violated the treaty. We're not using military force, Jack replied calmly. We're simply defending ourselves with civilian technology. a right guaranteed under Section 7 of the treaty. The Drax commander cut the transmission. "They're powering weapons," the tactical officer reported. Jack took a deep breath. "Initiate separation sequence. All ships." The 4 human vessels broke apart into their component modules, spreading out in a defensive formation around Mars. The Drax fleet opened fire. The battle was like nothing humans had ever experienced. The Drax ships were powerful, their weapons designed for maximum destruction. But the human modules were small, fast, and nearly impossible to target effectively. They darted between the larger ships, using their mining lasers to target weapons and engines with surgical precision. "We've disabled 8 of their ships," the tactical officer reported after 20 minutes, "but we've lost 17 modules." Jack watched the tactical display. The Drax were adapting, learning to predict the movements of the modules. It was time. "Begin Phase 2, he ordered. "Prepare the Trojan." One of the Prometheus modules moved into position, then appeared to take a direct hit. It tumbled through space, venting atmosphere in a convincing display of critical damage. "The Drax command ship is moving to intercept," the tactical officer reported. "They're scanning the damaged module." Jack held his breath. Everything depended on the Drax following their standard protocol for capturing enemy technology. "They've activated a tractor beam," someone called out. "They're bringing the module aboard." Jack nodded. "Now we wait." 5 tense minutes passed. Then suddenly, the lights on the Drax command ship flickered. Energy fluctuations detected in the Drax flagship, the sensor officer reported, excitement in her voice. "Their weapons are powering down. Internal systems failing." On the tactical display, the dots representing Drax ships began to slow and stop as confusion spread through their fleet. Without orders from their command ship, they hesitated. Jack opened a channel to all Earth vessels. "All modules, focus on disabling the remaining active ships. Non-lethal tactics only." The remaining human modules swarmed the confused Drax fleet. One by one, the enemy ships lost power, their weapons and engines disabled by precisely targeted energy beams. Within an hour, the battle was over. 53 Drax warships floated powerless in space, surrounded by Earth's civilian research modules. Jack opened a channel to the crippled Drax flagship. "Fleet Commander Vex, your fleet has been disabled. We've caused minimal casualties and can provide emergency life support if needed." The Drax commander's face appeared on screen, his expression a mixture of rage and disbelief. How did you defeat our warships with these toys?" Jack allowed himself a small smile. "Humans don't build warships, Commander. We build something better. We build smart." The battle footage spread quickly through the Union communication network. Species that had always accepted the dominance of the 3 ruling races watched in amazement as a newcomer defeated a major Drax fleet without violating the Treaty of Stars. In the Union Council chamber, Kell of the Vox watched the recordings with great interest. "Most unusual," he commented to his aide. "Should we be concerned?" the aide asked. "If other species adopt these human methods?" Kell's crystalline eyes sparkled with something that might have been amusement. "Perhaps," he said, "it is time for the Union to evolve. These humans, they think differently. That could be valuable." He tapped a message into his communication device, addressed to the Vox High Command. "Request immediate full council session." Topic: Humanity's status within the Union. Outside the council station's viewport, stars twinkled in the blackness of space. Somewhere out there, humanity had just changed the rules of a game that had remained unchanged for 10,000 years. 2 weeks after the battle near Mars, Jack found himself back in the Union Council chamber. This time, representatives from all member species were present, not just the ruling 3. The massive room buzzed with excited chatter. News of the human victory over the Drax fleet had spread throughout the galaxy. Jack sat at the Earth delegation table with Admiral Wilson and President Hall. Across the chamber, the Drax representatives glared at them with barely contained rage. Kell, the Vox diplomat, rose to speak. The chamber fell silent. "This emergency session of the Union Council will now begin," Kell announced, his crystalline voice echoing in the large space. "We face an unprecedented situation. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Treaty of Stars has been challenged in its interpretation." The Drax representative stood immediately. "The humans have made a mockery of our sacred treaty. They built warships while pretending they were not warships. They must be punished." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Jack noticed that many of the smaller species representatives were watching with great interest. Kell held up a hand for silence. "The technical committee has reviewed all evidence from the recent conflict. Their finding is that the human vessels, both individually and collectively, do not meet the treaty's definition of a warship. Each module is, indeed, classified correctly as civilian equipment." The Drax representative hissed. "Then the definition must be changed. The treaty must be rewritten to prevent this trickery." The representative from the Mist Collective, a swirling cloud of gas in a containment suit, joined the debate. "Perhaps the treaty does need revision. It was written in a different time." President Hall stood. "Earth requests permission to address the council." Kell nodded. "Granted." President Hall looked around the chamber. "The Treaty of Stars was meant to protect peace in the galaxy, but over time, it has become a tool to keep newer species weak and dependent on the protection of the ruling three. When the Drax attacked our research station, we had two choices: remain defenseless or find a creative solution. We chose the latter." Jack watched the faces of the various representatives. Many of the smaller species were nodding in agreement. The Drax representative cut in. "Your creative solution violated the spirit of the treaty. You built combat vessels." "No," Jack said, standing up beside the president. "We built versatile, adaptable ships that can protect themselves when needed." "There's a difference." Kell's crystalline eyes focused on Jack. "Captain Miller makes an interesting point. The purpose of the treaty was never to leave species defenseless. Perhaps the problem is not with the humans' interpretation, but with how the treaty has been enforced over the millennia." Shocked whispers filled the chamber. For a Vox to question the treaty was unheard of. Kell continued, "I propose a new path forward. Rather than punishing Earth for its innovation, we should invite humanity to become a full member of the Union, with all rights and privileges." The Drax representative nearly roared in outrage. "Impossible. They must first serve 100 years as a protected species, as all others have done." "Why?" Kell asked simply. "Because that is how it has always been. The humans have demonstrated they can defend themselves effectively without building traditional warships. Perhaps there is more we can learn from them." Jack exchanged surprised glances with Admiral Wilson and President Hall. This was not what they had expected. After hours of heated debate, the council called for a vote. To everyone's surprise, many of the smaller species sided with the Vox proposal. The final tally: Earth would be admitted as a full Union member, with one important condition: they would share their design philosophy with the Union Defense Committee. Later, in a private meeting room, Kell met with the Earth delegation. "You seem surprised by my support," the Vox diplomat said to Jack. Jack nodded. "I expected you to side with the Drax in demanding stricter controls on Earth." Kell made a sound like crystals tinkling. A Vox laugh. "Captain Miller, the Vox have suspected the Drax plans for decades. They have been eliminating or subjugating smaller species, one by one. But we were constrained by our own laws and traditions. So you used us," Admiral Wilson said, understanding dawning. "Perhaps," Kell admitted. "Or perhaps we recognized an opportunity for change. The Union has grown stagnant. We build the same ships, follow the same rules, century after century. Then humans arrive, and in less than a decade find a solution that has eluded us for millennia." President Hall leaned forward. "So what happens now? We become full Union members and start building actual warships." To everyone's surprise, Jack spoke up. "I don't think we should." All eyes turned to him. The modular design works, Jack explained. It's more versatile than traditional warships. Each module can serve multiple purposes: research, mining, defense. It's efficient. Why build dedicated warships when we can have vessels that adapt to whatever situation they face? Kel studied Jack with interest. What are you suggesting, Captain? A new Union defense doctrine, Jack said, based on adaptability rather than brute force. Ships that serve many purposes, not just fighting. It would reduce the resource burden on all member species while improving collective security. The Vox diplomat was silent for a long moment. You continue to surprise me, Captain Miller. I had assumed once granted full member status, humans would eagerly build the weapons you were previously denied. Jack shook his head. That's not who we are. We don't want to dominate. We want to innovate. If the rest of the Union is willing, I believe our engineers could help design a new generation of multi-purpose vessels that would benefit everyone. 6 months later, Jack stood in the observation lounge of the Union's central shipyard. Below, workers from a dozen species collaborated on the construction of a massive new vessel, the Concordia. Kel joined him at the viewport. The first of its kind, the Vox diplomat said proudly. A true Union vessel, incorporating technology from all member species, but designed on human principles. The Concordia was beautiful, a marvel of engineering that could separate into different configurations depending on its mission. In peacetime, its modules would serve scientific and commercial purposes. In times of danger, they could quickly reconfigure for defense. You know, Kel said thoughtfully, in 10,000 years of the treaty, no one ever questioned why warships had to look like warships. We all accepted the definitions without challenge. Jack smiled. Humans have a saying. Sometimes the box needs thinking outside of. Kel made his tinkling laugh sound. Indeed. And now, the whole Union benefits from that thinking. As they watched, the Concordia began moving out of the shipyard for its first test flight. Its modular design gleamed in the starlight. Neither fully a warship nor fully a peaceful vessel, but something new altogether. You humans never built warships after all, Kel remarked. No, Jack agreed. We built something better, peace through adaptability. The Concordia disappeared into the stars, carrying with it the beginning of a new era for the galaxy, one where the Treaty of Stars protected all species equally, and where human ingenuity had changed the course of galactic history without firing a single shot in anger.